Hello and welcome to Property Summit's essential viewing for landlords, investors and developers alike, whether you're looking to expand your business or just starting out. I'm Emma Birchley and joining me today are 5 experts who together represent a property portfolio worth a whopping £1.5 billion. Tony Gimple knows all there is to know about the private rental sector and is leading advisor when it comes to tax planning. John Howard also knows a thing or two about property, having bought and sold more than 3,500 houses, apartments and developments in the UK. I'm joined too by Nicholas Wallwork, another seasoned property developer and investor who is CEO of the world's largest international property forum. Finally with me here in the studio is Richard Bush, founder of Crowdlords, which offers crowdfunding property investments across the UK. And of course, we mustn't forget property entrepreneur Paul Mahoney, joining us all the way from Australia, founder of Nova Financial Group, which provides property investment advice with a particular focus on buy-to-let. It's great to be with you all today. So first off, the budget. And over to you, Tony. What were your thoughts?
It was the right budget at the right time. It's specifically designed to get the economy going. You know, the state protection racket has had to dig deep into its pocket to keep society and the economy going. Could it have been better? Could it have been worse? Yeah, you know, everyone's a critic. But overall, the budget, I believe, has really stimulated, growth in the economy, get us back to work. House prices are going to continue to rise. Developers are going to do exceptionally well. First-time buyers will get back on the market. And overall, when you look at how much the government has spent, how little they've clawed back for first go, I suspect as time goes on, we get into maybe September and we get into certainly next year's budget, we may be seeing a different landscape. Either way, the revenue has to claw back that money, and the best way to do it, rather than the blunt instrument of taxation, and everyone has to pay the correct amount of tax, is stimulate growth.
Richard, what are your thoughts on it?
I thought it was very generous. I was surprised how generous it would be. I thought he would introduce more measures to claw back the money that he's been giving out so generously over the last 12 months or so. It's good that that's continuing because the economy still needs support. But I expected him to do more around corporation tax. I know he can't do anything around personal tax because of the commitments that the party made. But generally, I thought it was very good. I was very positive about it. Not a lot direct for property apart from the first-time buyer mortgage idea, which is a good idea.
Yeah, so that's the mortgage guarantee scheme. So basically, the government will guarantee to lenders that they're safe, they're secure in their lending. And as a result, people will be able to borrow 95%. I mean, that's pretty big stuff, isn't it? Because that had changed back in the summer. People stopped doing that, didn't they? John?
Yeah, they did. And they had a similar scheme in about 2013 and they brought it back. They've changed it slightly, I think. And the great thing about this is, at the moment, it's a two-tier market for first-time buyers. There's new build, where the Help to Buy, which are more expensive than the second-hand houses, if you like, that people might buy as first-timers. So this levels up the field, which I think is much fairer than it is at the moment.
What do you think, Nicholas?
Yeah, I'm really positive about it. I think it's helped people on all levels and all walks of life to get either back into business with the various grants, and furlough being extended is a big one. It's a big one for existing landlords. We're fairly big landlords ourselves, so one of our concerns was, is it going to drop off a cliff, unemployment rising? But I think they've done a really good job of solidifying a solid 12 months at least ahead, where people will be getting back to work. I think the economy is likely to boom, which means people will be maintaining their employment past this year. Don't forget, they've also extended the SDLT holidays, not the buying holidays, so up to, I think it's £500,000. They've extended that by 3 months.
So that's stamp duty you're
stamp
talking
duty,
about.
sorry,
yes.
yeah, apologies, yeah, stamp duty. And up to £250,000, they've extended that for 6 months. So that'll again help continue to sort of help the housing market stabilise at this time when I think we need stabilisation in kind of all areas.
I mean, to you, Paul, actually on stamp duty, What difference do you think it makes? What's the knock-on impact on the property world by the government extending this further?
Yeah, well, I think it will be a positive impact, of course. You know, it's a further incentive for people to continue to transact on properties. However, it was a change that was expected. I think, in fact, it was leaked prior to the budget and reported on quite heavily. But it's good to see it confirmed. It was just one of the sort of relatively positive things that formed part of this budget. So far as expectations moving forward, everything seemed pretty positive around the economy and, less job loss than expected and that sort of thing. So overall, I think the budget's quite a positive thing. A lot of people who are holding off from buying are likely to now re-enter the market, given the fact that the budget certainly wasn't bad.
What do we think about the corporation tax news? So for the bigger businesses, come 2023, we're looking at 25%. What difference is that going to make? I
think I'm very disappointed with it, because the whole point of this government was they had a plan to bring down corporations tax to 16%. That was their plan. In Ireland, it's 13%. And if you want to encourage new companies to be based in the UK after Brexit, which we all do, then putting it up to 25% is not going to help.
Need to claw it back from somewhere, though, don't they?
Yeah, and don't forget they're clawing it back from the bigger businesses, which have probably weathered the storm better. They would have had larger cash reserves, and actually they're the Amazons of this world are the ones we want to go after, right?
Against what the Conservative ideas are.
No, I understand that.
Totally against it.
I'm not making a political point, I'm making an economy point, and for the everyday person, which is 95% of the country that aren't in that higher wealth tax bracket, it works for them. So it might be against policy, but
it is the entrepreneurs in this country, it's the entrepreneurs that drive employment and everything else. And if you take that incentive away from them,
that's true.
They don't need to do it.
But John, how else would you recover the amount of money that's been given away to keep companies going over the last 12 months?
Fortunately, that's not my job.
No, I understand
Fortunately,
that.
It's not my job.
If not corporation tax, then what?
Well, you could have done something on VAT. There's lots of other ways you could have done it. And I just think that we're on a world stage now. We're not Europe, we're world. And I was a big fan of Brexit and doing it. And part of that was to reduce corporation tax. And that's exactly what they've not done, or not going to do, potentially.
Well, potentially. Bear in mind the next election is 3 years away. As the economy recovers, as more money comes into the coffers, I suspect by the time we get to, if not the next budget, the one after, then we'll start to see corporation tax rates hopefully get back to previous commitments and once again make us the most competitive nation.
I just think they could have been more dynamic on that.
Bringing it back to property for a moment, the threshold is £250,000 of profit. Is that right, Tony? So in that scenario, property investors that have done correct tax planning, I'd like to hear from you on that, having their developments and sites in separate SPVs, is it looked at as a per SPV basis? And if so, this is good for property investors.
Explain
not
what
bad.
an SPV is.
Sorry, special purpose vehicle. So a limited company, in essence, it might be, for each site or each property. So provided each property is big enough to warrant a limited company for its own ownership structure, you can't go over 250,000 profit in that one property, and thus actually by spreading it out, would that be good for property investors?
Yeah, there's
it seems
more
like
to
it could
it
be.
Than trying to game the system by having a string of separate companies.
Not a bad idea.
No, but if you do, and that's not tax planning, that's your corporate structure for a number of reasons, then surely this doesn't necessarily affect you, this corporation tax issue, unless it's a really big development that turns over and makes a lot of profit.
Where you're running a property development business, you're going to be making profits. You'll be able to offset profits in a variety of structures, staying within the law, paying the correct amount of tax. Where it may well hurt people, particularly in the buy-to-let market, is where you have rental properties owned by limited companies with no other measures in place. It would be quite possible for some of those to fall foul of the higher rates of corporation tax and go well over that $250,000 in profits. Development is one thing. Running a professional property business in terms of owning HMOs, serviced accommodation, shared, whatever name you want to put it, but where there's rental incomes coming in, where the properties are owned by that limited company, that's where there's going to be a sting in the tail, and something that has been very little comment on at the moment. Either way, everyone has to pay the correct amount of tax. That's all HMRC want. You know, it's kept us going. We've got massive advantages. The Commonwealth, Brexit, a housing shortage, a social housing shortage. You know, there are so many ways that we can work, you know, with the government, we can work with local authorities. And for me, the big thing is that we don't forget everything we've thought about during the lockdown, about all those who couldn't help themselves, and we start addressing the 350,000 new homes needed every year, the shortage of 90,000 social housing homes, and by working with that system, the tax won't be a problem, because what goes out one pocket will come back in the next, and we'll all find that people are buying more, people are renting more for the right reasons. They start to not let the tax tail wag the overall planning dog. Nobody likes paying tax. You know, everyone hates it. You know.
Really?
Yeah.
I like paying tax.
If
I'm paying tax, I'm making money,
Paul,
so I don't mind.
Can I just say, Paul loves, he's the younger generation, you and Nicholas, and you love paying tax. I mean, I've got young friends who would happy to pay more tax than they do, and I'm going, what the hell are you talking about?
I love it, but just let's just be clear. We're talking about a difference between 19% and 25%. You know, for most property investors, landlords, most landlords we work with generate maybe, you know, somewhere between 20,000 and 200,000 pounds in profit in their property companies. Now, you know, let's say you've got 100,000, just as an example, and it's my understanding, correct me if I'm wrong, but my understanding is that there's no increase for people that are bringing in 50,000 pounds of profit, and then it scales up to 25% once you earn over 250. So let's say it's an extra 3% tax. That's $3,000 a year. You're still making 97 grand.
But Paul,
you know,
it's
I
not
think
all
we
about.
need to be clear here. This isn't doom and gloom, and I think sometimes property people can be a little bit negative and not see the positives of some things and say, oh no, another tax hit for me. Well, come on, like, you know, it's not really that bad. It's something you can overcome. And especially so if Nick's right, because that, to be honest, that was the first thing I thought when I saw this tax change is, well, let's just set up 5 different SPVs that all earn 50 grand each, and then we don't pay any extra tax. And I haven't seen anything that says you can't do that.
Well, what I would say, Paul, you know, I knew you were going to say that. I knew you were going to say a bit more tax, who cares, a bit more tax. Well, some of us do care. Some of us are at the wrong ends of our careers, and actually, we don't want to be paying a load more tax. And that is an issue. And you know, there's lots of companies in this country that make a profit of between, say, 250,000 and 500,000, and will continue to do so, hopefully. But they're going to be paying more tax, when the whole point of this the government was to reduce corporation tax down to 16%.
But that was before there was a global pandemic. I mean, all bets are off now. They really are.
I accept that, Emma. I do accept that. But hopefully, you know, by the time the next election comes around, they will be promising 16% corporation tax again, because that's what a lot of people voted on.
Let me ask you a question. Would you like to make loads more profit and pay a little bit more tax, or barely any profit and pay less tax?
I want to make as much profit as I can for myself and my shareholders and people, and I want to pay as little tax as possible, because I also pay a lot of personal. But Paul, I also pay, like we all do, a lot of personal tax as well. And don't forget that we all pay a lot of personal tax.
But that didn't change. Actually,
is what we did see in the budget is that the overall economic impact so far of the pandemic was about half of what was expected. So not anywhere near as bad as what we thought it was going to be. And now the expected unemployment is also going to be about half of what we expected. So overall, we should all make more money. And maybe if we pay a little bit extra tax on that more money we make, it's not the end of the world.
I think Richard agrees with me.
I think everybody here agrees with Paul.
Paul,
John,
I can't believe that.
hands up who agrees with Paul.
How can that? You're all making me out to be some ruthless property developer, as if.
The one thing
You do that all on your own, John, don't worry.
The one thing Emma mentioned there was personal tax, and I guess the only change there was that he's not going to increase the allowance level, so we are going to pay...
more people gradually will go up into the next band.
Well, yes.
Eventually.
But those bands are too high anyway. The top band is far too high. You're trying to encourage entrepreneurs to not retire, but to work and employ more people. That isn't the way to do it.
John, I completely agree with you. It's just a case of timing. And at the moment, we need to pay back all the money that we've paid out over the last 12
something
months.
has to be paid.
But in principle, you know.
But I think what we're hoping that the economy is going to boom, and I've spoken to several business owners that boomed last summer when there was the sort of eat out.
To help out.
Thank you.
Yep.
And they said they've made more money than they've ever made, you know, sort of restaurateurs and pubs and various people that have took advantage of that and made it work for them. And I think that's going to be even stronger this summer. You know, I think we're going to see a really strong summer. I hope we will.
I think so, but don't forget, everyone's going to have to start paying these loans back from next month or whenever onwards. So, I mean, 1.6 million businesses in the UK have borrowed money off the government.
As part of the government's incentives, there was 280 billion given out. Was that including Sybil's loans and bounce back loans? In which case, that's getting paid back through that scheme anyway, not just through taxes.
But they're now saying they think 35% of the people who borrowed these loans aren't going to pay it back.
No.
35% potentially.
Well, there are options on how they pay it back. Yeah. They can extend it over 10 years, they can go for interest only.
Or they can go bankrupt and start again, or they can dissolve the company, or all sorts.
Yeah, but that will
that's
get...
wrong.
That's absolutely wrong.
A lot will do that, I'm sure.
Yeah, so the burden on the state will reduce, but let's concentrate on what we're here for, you know, in property. Let's build more homes, get them affordable, get them sustainable, get more people, you know, owning their own property and developing the right kind of homes for people across the board, because that will stimulate the economy more than anything else.
Tony, if you want to do that, you need to somehow crack the planning system in the UK.
Well,
it's a big job.
Planning's really important because the local authorities hold up planning reform. But why don't we give grants to developers? I mean, they're far and few between. I know John's had some experience with, is it Homes England?
Yeah, very much so.
Which has worked for you in the past. But there's not enough of these grants for smaller house builders that can make a huge impact to the market. The big house builders, you know, they're doing fine. They've got a system. They're a big juggernaut.
In the 1970s, the small house builders contributed to 70% of the houses being built in the UK.
So where's the help for them?
Now it's 7%, and the big 10 house builders build something like 65 to 70% of the houses in the UK. Housing associations make up the balance, and then only 7% are small private companies like ours.
Right, it's time to move on. We're going to talk now about the buy-to-let market, and I know a lot of people in this time, they're actually looking to enter the market, people looking to expand. Paul, what impact do you think the pandemic has had on this side of the property sector?
Well, I think far less than expected in March last year. I tried to put on a brave face, but to be honest, I was a bit worried in March, April last year with everything that was happening. I wasn't quite sure how it was going to affect the property market, but it was resilient in 2020, about average growth across the country for, historical average, which is pretty good considering we're in a pandemic for 9 months of it. But a lot of people were certainly holding off for this budget. When we talk to people on a daily basis about investing in property, and a lot of people were saying, I just want to see what happens in this budget and see if it's really bad. And it definitely wasn't really bad. In fact, some of it was quite positive so far as the outlook and what's to come. We've got a new infrastructure bank. We've got money being spent on the regions. A whole range of things that are quite good for the north of England. London's probably had enough help to now. And so therefore it's probably fair that now there's proper money being spent outside of London on the Midlands and the north and that sort of thing. So I think there's a possibility that there'll be a bit of a rebound from now, that we'll see some proper money flowing into buy to let, probably more across the regions that I mentioned as opposed to London, where it's a bit more affordable, the yields are a bit better and that sort of thing. To be honest, I think after seeing the budget, I'd be surprised if there isn't. I don't know how long that will last, but I think there will be a boost in the number of people buying over the coming months.
Is there much about, though, if you wanted to, increase your buy-to-let portfolio, or you wanted to enter that area for the first time, is there much around for you to invest in?
Well, supplies definitely died off due to the pandemic. Pretty well all development sites, well, not all of them, but most have been delayed. So, supply that you would have expected to be on the market already isn't. And demand has reportedly increased. So I suppose there is slightly less than you would expect currently, but there are always properties you can buy. It just means that maybe the asking prices might start to increase as that demand re-enters the market.
And does it make a difference, gentlemen, that, with stamp duty holiday extensions, maybe properties that would have been available, may have been buy-to-let fodder, actually ends up becoming first-time buyer homes?
I hope that'll happen, because what the government have realised is that there's too many people buying houses to invest in, and not enough people buying them to live in. And the government, and I've said this before, the government know if someone buys their own home or flat, they're far more likely to vote Tory than anything else, and that's what this is partly all about. It's what it's partly all about. Quick thing, I would say, 100 billion has been saved during this COVID time, and some of that money is certainly going into second homes, investment properties and so on. We've seen that across the country that people are looking to buy in more rural areas with second homes and so on, with the money they've saved.
It's less about who people are going to vote for and more about social mobility. If you buy your own home, you've got more chance of having a stable existence, a good roof over your head, bring up your children if you're going to have children, in a good environment. So whilst yes, there's been a degree of fewer properties, there's still the housing shortage, there are still people buying, still people selling, and the 95% mortgage guarantee will absolutely help people who couldn't otherwise get a mortgage,
sure,
who desperately want to buy their own home. And so many of those at some point do end up going into the private rented sector and buying another property and helping the next generation or the next person in the street through.
But they are taking away properties that would otherwise go to first-time buyers. That's the problem. It does create more.
One of the things I did like to see in the budget was that with the stamp duty reforms, they've put, obviously as property investors we will pay this 3% surcharge anyway, they've also brought an additional 2% surcharge for overseas buyers buying in the UK. But I think that's really positive, because that's taking away from housing stock for people that really need it in the UK.
But is that a good idea?
Well, I think it helps certainly in places like London, where that's been a very market fueled by overseas investment in previous years. They've obviously brought in the reforms around.
Personally, I didn't like that. I think a lot of the rental properties, and not every young person can afford to buy, and so they'll rent, are funded by overseas investors. Paul, you must provide lots of properties to overseas investors.
Yeah, will that hurt you, Paul, that extra 2%? Well, but will that hurt that market?
Yeah, there's obviously demand from overseas. For us, really, it's more so domestic. People within the UK. But I think something worth mentioning there kind of ties into a few points that we just mentioned is the sort of generational shift in what people want these days. We're predominantly based in London, and we work with a lot of young people who aren't that interested in buying their own home anymore, because they've kind of realised, well, I like living centrally and I can't afford to buy centrally. So they're investing elsewhere. And maybe that shifts things a bit as well, in that not that they don't want to have their own home, they're just more lifestyle focused. So they prefer to be close to work and facilities and amenities, and are happy to pay rent for much longer than they would be before. That's maybe impacted by the fact they're having children later, they're having less children, they're not that interested in getting married, a whole range of things that are shifting generationally that has an impact on the property market.
Just one quick last thought. Because of the pandemic, the way people are working has changed. People are right now working from home, and actually having discussions about that carrying on. And as a result, people are moving out of the cities. I got a letter just yesterday saying people are looking like a house like yours in the country. They're moving from London, they're moving from South Essex. What impact is that going to have across the property market?
I think the short-term impact will be some of these city centres will become quieter, and actually a lot of the offices will be turned into residential, and there'll be more pleasant places to live in eventually. There'll be villages within a city almost. But short-term, I think the properties in the city centres are going to be slightly more vulnerable price-wise for the next year or two while that adjustment is made.
That's also a positive, isn't it, for the regeneration of property.
Absolutely.
For us developers. PD opportunities, PD rights are getting more relaxed.
Permissive
They've been extended.
You mean, do you?
Say again, sorry?
Permissive
development, yes,
yeah.
apologies. So that's a real positive for delivering more housing stock where perhaps those places are being unused. At least they're going to be recycled into something that we need.
Yeah, if I can comment on that. Sorry, guys. I think personally that's been over-egged a bit too much. And I think we need to be a little bit conscious of not paying too much attention to mainstream media. You know, for example, I'm sure you guys do as well. I get emails and calls all the time from journalists wanting comment on things. And that's been one of the main things they want comment on lately. Now, you know, if they can write an article about it, all of a sudden it becomes fact. And I haven't actually seen any evidence of people vacating central areas. In fact, I saw a report the other day that said that central New York has grown in population over the pandemic.
Well,
I don't know whether that's the case as well in the UK, but I certainly haven't seen people leaving unless they've got the means to do so, if that makes sense. And that's not the greater population.
Well, thank you, gentlemen. That's all we've got time for now. More great insights from this expert panel with me here in the studio. For now, though, bye-bye.